Hello, friends, and welcome to the Internet Riding Buddies podcast, gracefully hosted by me, the graceful Benegade, and of course, Dork in the closet.
Hello, everyone. We are so delighted to be here. This is actually a first time for us. What time are we recording, Ben?
It is 4 p.m. The workday has ended. Normally we record in the morning, so I'm usually sipping coffee.
Yes. But
But
today...
today... Here, hold on. Some ASMR for you types.
Look at you getting the good video shots. Yeah.
Oh, ASMR. A little ice. So, for me, I thought since we're like basically advertising, I would have, this is a local. This is from Albany. You've had it. Grace has had it. I introduced her to it. This is maybe the best single malt I've ever had.
It's so
Single
good.
malt, and it's only like $60 a bottle because they distill it in Albany. You can just go right in and get it. It's one of my favorites to give people for Christmas presents because you kind of have to live around here. You can find it in the liquor stores locally, but it's a good one. So
it is tasty. Yes, yeah. And it is Buffalo Trace for the Grace today, which is my standard go-to bourbon for the price. It's extremely drinkable and delicious, and I'm a huge fan. So
yeah, Buffalo Trace is great too because it's kind of every barrel is different, so it's always good, but it's a different kind of experience on your palate every time.
Yes, for sure.
This is actually good.
Yeah, I know. So anyway, happy hour, everybody. We are excited to be having a little booze while we talk about a fun topic today. But before we dive into that, Ben had a great, what was it, April Fool's story you wanted to share?
Yeah, April Fool's Day was awesome because set my alarm and got up early because I had a dentist appointment on my calendar and was kind of groggy and just trying to get out of the house, and I didn't really have time to drink any coffee or anything. And I got halfway there and realized I was still wearing my slippers, so I never put my shoes on. But it was too late, point of no return, so I went in, just kind of hoping nobody would notice because people wear pajamas places all the time, so whatever. And I go in and I'm like, I have an appointment at 8 a.m. And the lady's like, oh, what's your name? And I told her, and she's looking. And, you know, it goes from like working to confused face.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think I have an appointment today. It's on my calendar. And they're like, we have an appointment in August. And I was like, right, I knew about that one, but is it my cleaning today? And sort of back and forth. And then the other lady behind the counter goes, didn't we move your appointment up to February? And I was like, we sure did. So it was my original date for my new patient exam that we moved up, but I never took it off my calendar.
Such a lovely April Fool's on yourself.
Yeah, but
nice.
there's a coda to this because I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll see you later. In August, I walk outside and I'm headed to my Forerunner and I hear, hey, young man, come back here. And I turn around and my dad was there in the dentist's office. And he heard me and came out. It was super weird.
Young man. Oh, I love it. That's great.
Yeah, well.
Thank you, parents.
By comparison, I'll always be young.
Yes, well, it's true. We're always younger than our parents. It's pretty great.
Yeah, except my kid's always younger than me. Anyway, today I was inspired to seek Grace's expertise on a topic that many people, I think, when they think about camping, is something that causes them anxiety. And it just made me think about my journey to the semi-comfortable camper that I am now. And the topic is camping alone. I think a lot of people just won't do it. Like there's so much anxiety around it. And I just kind of I thought about making a video, but then I was like, this is really a long topic and I should really get Grace in on this because she has camped alone more than anybody. So Grace, tell me about the first time you went camping alone.
You mean the first couple of times I went camping alone and had full-blown anxiety attacks in my tent by myself? Yeah, let's talk about that. So before I did my full, leaving stint living off the bike for 14 months, I had done a lot of camping by myself, starting when I actually had my old Beamer, my F700 GS, and I really pushed myself to try and camp alone early on when I first moved out to Bend. But the first few times I went camping alone, I would wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning and I would either hear something or just like be startled awake. And I would just go into full anxiety mode of someone's outside my tent. Something obviously woke me up. I'm in danger. And the big thing for me is sometimes being in the tent is almost like claustrophobic because you can't see what's going on outside. So that almost induces anxiety more because then you can't look around. So then it's like very shakily getting the headlamp on and sticking your head out, hoping there's not anything out there, which by the way, almost every time nothing is out there. But yeah, it's always very anxiety inducing the first few times you camp alone because you're always going to the worst case scenario in your brain. However, I can assure you that does fade over time.
Well, that leads me to my second question. How is camping different for you now?
Now, I mean, I sleep with earbuds in, an eye mask on, and I am curled up in my sleeping bag, usually snoring within 10 minutes of being on my sleeping mat. And that's just all because after you have a certain amount of time where you do camp, you just kind of get used to it and you realize you are way more safe than you realize. And I've had a lot of incidents where I've been kept awake at night, which is why I started wearing earbuds in my ears because of Mother Nature, whether it be weather or honestly animals. We've all heard my barn owl story of camping in the redwoods, which was an absolute nightmare. But, once you kind of get used to those things and slowly introduce them, it makes camping a lot easier and a lot more comfortable. But you kind of have to baby step it because there's certain things and certain habits that one camper might have that others might not. Like I have a lot of friends that could never sleep with earbuds in because they can't hear anything and they hate that. So to each their own, I suppose. But now I sleep like a baby.
Yeah, I think back to my first time solo camping, and it's on camera. There's a video of it. My microphone
Yes.
was screwy, but it's a good video. And I went out, like it wasn't my first time camping, but it was my first time dispersed camping by myself, and I think
Yeah,
that's very different than camping in
absolutely.
a campground. And I still, honest to be honest, don't love dispersed camping by myself. I'll do it, but like if I'm by myself, I'll almost always just go to a campground just because like I can get firewood easier, and it's just easier. There's
Yes.
a picnic table. God, I love picnic tables. But anyway, I was same as you, like paranoid. You don't sleep. Like you're dozing in and out, and you're like having nightmares about how you're being murdered by a bear or whatever. So it's not very restful
Yeah.
because of the paranoia and every little noise and everything you're saying. And now I'm like you. One, I've just decided that like there's not really much I can do about anything. So
Yeah.
when's the last time you heard about someone in our state getting attacked by a bear in their tent? I've never heard of it. So,
Yeah.
well, I mean, not often, and not the places where I go. There's been one reported cougar death or death by cougar in the history of the state. Think about things like this, statistics, and I just put my earplugs in and go to sleep because what the hell am I going to do? So
Yeah.
I'd rather not hear it and just sleep.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
And most of the time, for the record, everybody, those animals are way more afraid of you than you are of them. And they don't really, I mean, they can obviously smell better than we can. So I'm sure they can smell that we're in our tents or we're in the premises or whatever. But if you're in your tent, they can't see you. They're not going to go in there and attack you. That just doesn't happen. I have never had anyone I know or anyone I've heard of really have somebody go into their tent and attack them.
yeah,
Granted,
I'll
there are survivor stories. Obviously, we've all heard them on podcasts and whatever else, but they're very few and far between, especially where we live. I mean, that's more of like up in like the Yukon and Alaska and again, dispersed camping like you were talking about. But I'll add dispersed camping for me is also it is a little unnerving. I think just especially being a female because when you're a female alone in the middle of the woods and you're like way out of range, even if you have like a Garmin inReach on you or something like that, it's going to take a long time for somebody to get to you if something goes wrong. So I'm definitely a little more careful in those situations, but I think campground's always the way to go. It's just way more comfortable. Like you can have your fire when fires aren't banned, and if something does go wrong, there are people nearby. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, dispersed is definitely another level. Like just because
Yeah.
the dangers, it's maybe not more Well, it probably is a little more dangerous, but the consequences are a lot
Right.
different,
Yeah.
especially
Absolutely.
when you're by yourself and you can't just stumble to a camper and bang on the door or whatever. And
Yeah.
talking about the animal thing, I will say I used to like worry about bears and stuff, and now I do still like clean up the campsite, but it's to keep raccoons from getting into all my stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
the
Raccoons are
worst,
the worst. They're
yeah,
the absolute worst. That's what I worry about more than
yeah,
anything
yeah.
is little trash pandas getting in there with their opposable thumbs. Yeah, I mean, I've told
Unzipping
you
your
this
tent.
story where I have had little tiny trash pandas open up a bag of chips, no tears, no nothing.
Yeah.
They're able to get that bag open like a human, okay? It's terrifying. So that is way more of a concern, I think, than a bear probably ever will be for most people.
The worst animals I've ever had problems with, birds, particularly blue jays, because if you turn
Really?
your back,
Oh.
they'll eat anything you leave out. Dog food, bread. We had them landing on Tim's tent one morning because they were buzzing around, so we just trapped through a bunch of chips on top of his tent, just like that's what I've seen the most. Like, and it's not like
Yeah.
they're going to hurt you, but if your stuff's going to get
No.
messed up, like it's going to
Yeah.
be a bird.
They just it's the little scavengers that you need to worry about in campsites. Again, obviously there are the horror stories of, oh my god, what happened when a cougar got into camp, but again, few and far between, very very rare most places in the United States. So just be mindful of that, and if you are nervous about that, then just do a campground. You don't need to go to the middle of nowhere by yourself. Just go somewhere where there's more people, then you have backup. Problem
Yeah,
solved.
and speaking of that, because that's the point of like the point of this topic was not to be like, we're not afraid anymore, so you shouldn't be either. Bleh. It's kind of to talk about tips and tricks that have
Yes.
helped us reduce our anxiety and other people. And so one that we're kind of getting at is that um, identify the source of your anxiety and then kind of
Yeah.
try to look at it objectively. Like,
Yeah.
yes, everyone's afraid that a bear is going to open their tent. But unless you're in a place where they're super habituated to people, like Yellowstone or something, where that does happen if you're not careful. Or this is the other thing, at least around here, and I have limited experience. You've camped a lot more of the country than I have, but when there is even the slightest chance of a bear issue, like Paulina Lake, there's
Yeah.
always signs up that are like, just put your
Everywhere.
trash away. Like, so if
Yep.
you don't see a sign, it's probably fine. That's a rhyme I just made up for you.
No. Hey, I think it's great. It's that English major coming out.
Mm.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that I have an anxiety with is claustrophobia. And I can deal with a lot of tight spaces, but I started to realize that my fear and anxiety when I was camping was because I was feeling claustrophobic in the tent because I was unable to see out of it. So, usually, what I will do then is just in case, I'll leave one of my little windows open unless it's really, really cold, and being able to identify that that's actually the reason why you're afraid and unable to see versus like, oh, I'm afraid of the monsters. Like, let's be honest, most of our fears come from other things that are triggered. So I think it's really important to understand your own anxieties just by yourself before you go and know that you're going to have those issues maybe when you're out in the darkness alone in your tent.
Yeah, and I would just this is taking a slight step back. We'll come right back to what you're saying. It, don't go camping by yourself the first time you go camping. Like
No.
this is like
Oh.
you're graduating to camping by yourself. Like
Yes.
you should camp with other. I mean, unless you just can't. Like, and that happens. Maybe you have nobody that's interested, and then start
Yeah.
small, obviously. But the idea is. Hopefully, you kind of gain some skills. You learn from people that have done it before. It's like when you're on a plane and the turbulence kicks
Yeah.
in, right? I always just look at the flight attendants because if they're not concerned, I'm not concerned. And it's the same. You go
Yeah.
camping with somebody that has camping experience and something happens and they don't even seem to notice. It's probably fine. That's how you
Yeah.
learn that stuff.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. I didn't camp a lot when I was young. So I really got into camping by myself, and that is a sharp learning curve. I'm a very rare breed. Obviously, I think most people who know me by now know that I like to make myself uncomfortable and learn from it. But I don't recommend that with camping. It's a lot smoother of a process to get out there with friends, kind of understand your pattern and what goes into it before all of a sudden you're just like, okay, and there's like two other people at the campground, they're way over there, I'm camping alone, whatever else. So, yeah, I think it's super important. You also can pick up really awesome tips and tricks from other people who have been camping for longer as well. And it'll just put your mind at ease. It really will.
Yeah, because honestly, the actual dangers are minimal.
Yeah,
Perceived dangers, however, can be large and
always. Yes.
numerous. And we will talk about the other thing that people are afraid of
Hmm.
because I know there's people banging their keyboards right now. Like, yes, obviously, it's not just four-legged animals we're
No.
concerned about. We're
Yeah.
also concerned about the two-legged variety.
Yes.
Let's just start with identifying the source of your anxiety. So if the source of your anxiety is animals, then you take precautions. So you research the area you're going to. You make sure that your food is secured, and if you're really worried about it, put it really far away from you and hang it in a tree. I still remember this. It cracks me up every time I think about it. On the Washington BDR Day 5 video, I walk over it's like 200 yards out of camp, and I pull my food bag out of the tree. It's about 7 feet up, and I get so many comments like, bears can climb trees. Yes, I do. I'm not trying to keep them from eating it. I'm trying to keep them out of my tent.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
didn't have time to do a bear hang. I just wanted everything that smelled far from me, just in case. And and that's a little peace of mind, right? So whatever animals are in the area, make sure you're taking precautions. Make sure that your smelly things are not in the tent with you. Stuff like that.
That also includes toiletries, everybody, especially, and I'm speaking to women mainly right now too. If you have scented anything, get it out of your tent. And know this ahead of time. Try not to bring anything scented with you, because also you will attract all the bugs you don't want to have around you, mosquitoes, spiders, etc. If you smell great, they just will find you. But the other option too is there was a couple of times when I was camping in Wyoming and in Montana where we're camping in like a big field. There's no trees around. If that's the case, just walk 50 yards away from your tent and leave your food and stuff there. I promise you it'll be there when you wake up in the morning most of the time. But it's just better to take that precaution and get all of that stuff that smells like food or whatever else as far away from you as possible. Now, I will say, having it up the tree is great. I have had trash pandas tear my my hanging food down plenty of times. That's how they got in the chip bag too. So just know that that can happen, but like you pointed out, the point is just to have it be away from you. Otherwise it doesn't matter.
Yeah, a bear doesn't give a crap about you.
No.
It's not there to eat. Bears don't eat people.
No.
It's not they eat berries. That's why they're called berries, because bears eat them. And cougars don't hunt. If you see a cougar, you're probably safe because it let you see it. But they don't hunt people. So if you interact with a bear in a negative way, it's because it tried to get to the apples that you're in your tent. So don't leave them in your tent. Keep them away from you.
Y'all. If you're seeing a cougar, it's letting you see it, and it's not going to eat you. If that thing's going to eat you, you're not going to see it, and I hope you rest in peace and you die fast. But in general, the only bear you ever need to be afraid of, unless you're seeking out a grizzly or something like that, is a polar bear. And the odds of you coming head to head with the polar bear are so minimal. So all you got to do is just be smart. Just be smart.
Yeah, and I think we're mostly talking about motorcycle camping, but just because hard-sided camp, if you're in your car, just sleep in your car if you're really worried about it, or a camper. Bear's not getting there. But
this is when you don't have an option, when you are camping outside, no matter what. Yeah.
Yes. Another thing that I think makes camping less anxiety-inducing is to go a place that or that you've kind of scouted out, because when it gets dark, your imagination will fill in the surrounding area with all kinds of things. But if you've taken the time to kind of walk around, there's a road there, there's a stream over there's some trees over here that might be rustling, and then versus if you roll up, never seen the place before, it gets dark, you have no idea what's out there. So even campgrounds, I like to go look at them ahead of time if I can.
Yeah, having that territory be familiar, especially before you spend the night there, is really, really nice. Now, obviously, if you are doing something like a BDR trip or any kind of expedition trip, the odds of you being able to do that are smaller, but also the odds of you being with other people in general are a lot higher. So you're going to have less worry being in a pack of people. But yeah, if you are going to go to a dispersed site by yourself, maybe trek up there one day by yourself and check it out before you go camp there, just to even make sure it's campable, because there's plenty of times you'll get out there and you can't camp in some of those spots anymore. And getting back to kind of the fear of the two-legged things that I know a lot of us have, I have never run into any bad situations with dispersed camping with humans. I have had a moment of feeling like a situation might be a red flag situation, and then it ended up being totally fine and wonderful. But I think particularly in the Pacific Northwest, one thing to be conscientious about is just that there is definitely a community of people that are displaced, and there's drug use that is kind of correlated with that. And so if you do find yourself kind of camping and some sketchy people roll up and those little alarm bells are going off in your brain, just pack up and leave. Just get out of there.
Don't even
Don't
back
don't
up, just leave.
yeah. Just don't put yourself in a situation where you're going to feel anxious and at risk, you know? Sometimes things happen and you just got to bail and that's it.
Yeah, and I will. This kind of correlates with something I said in my 790 first ride video because it's like when you find trash in the woods, it's always pretty close to the entrance because
Yeah.
the Venn diagram of lazy people and or the Venn diagram of people that trash things and people who are lazy is a circle. So they aren't going to go any farther than they need to. So.
Yeah.
My advice is if you're going to disperse, and this applies even if you're not by yourself, is if you're worried about humans, go somewhere where humans are unlikely to be.
Yeah.
And you can tell that's the thing is if you go to a site and it's like clearly been used a lot, there's trash or just a lot of signs of human beings. I usually don't camp there.
Yeah.
If it's like clear that it's been used a lot, like if there's a nice fire pit, maybe like a log bench, but not like freshly cut firewood and stuff, or
Yeah.
really it's the trash sites I worry about because I worry about the trashy people coming back
Yes.
and being like get on my site, whatever. So
Yeah.
go places where people are unlikely to be. My first dispersed camping by myself, it's an end of a dead end road. And this is my secret spot to this day because there's no reason to be down there. It doesn't go through. So
Yeah.
there's no reason for anyone to be down there unless they're coming to the spot I'm at. So that's
Yeah.
like simultaneously giving you peace of mind. And also, if you hear something, you probably have a reason to be concerned, right? But I didn't hear anything.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
grass is 4 feet high. No one's camping there.
Yeah. And I think that that's, obviously every situation is different, every camp spot is different, but having those little spots and kind of knowing how things go is really nice. It's also nice because a lot of the times the places you love to camp, you'll go back to. So kind of getting to know those areas and finding those ideal spots, especially during the summer when you have different areas you want to ride, it's great. So don't be afraid to be a repeat camper and get back out there and have a spot you like. That's awesome. But just, be mindful. Know that in some areas, the best thing to do is just to avoid people altogether. And then in campgrounds, it's kind of nice having people around. It just depends on what you're at for.
Yeah, and everything we do, I mean, and by we, I mean adventure and dual sport riders, kind of
Yeah.
blends together because when I'm out
Yeah.
exploring a new area, I'm tagging campsites that I see. Like I'll mark
Yeah.
them in Onyx or whatever. When I went and scouted sections of the BDR that were close, I marked a bunch of campsites, and I actually went back
Yeah.
and camped at more than one of them.
Right.
So you can, and then you've eliminated or you've seen the place, right? So it's less scary.
Yeah.
You know what to expect. You know how to get there. So just if you're thinking about ever going dispersed camping, then pay attention when you're out riding and exploring because you may find a
Yeah.
great spot, but you want to remember where it is. Mark it on your GPS.
Yeah. And always do that. If you find a great spot, hold on to it. I still have places in Wyoming that I camped with Alex that I have marked on my Google Maps and will forever because they were so incredible. I want to go back at some point and camp again. And, you just don't always find those perfect camp spots where you're alone, view, and everything is calm and chill. So when you do find those little slices of paradise, definitely hold on to them.
So, what other things are people afraid of when they think about going camping by themselves?
Okay, I was thinking about this too, and I know this is going to be kind of a hilarious add-on, but a lot of people are afraid of taking a poop out in the woods by
Oh
themselves.
yeah, oh yeah.
And I look, obviously I'm a bit of a dirt bag after my time on the road, so I could literally give a shit about
You
that
could
anymore.
anywhere you want.
But the thing to remember is you just need to find a way to be okay with it, and you bring a shovel and you bring wet wipes and you do your thing. And there's another way to do it, obviously if you have a little more room or you aren't moto camping, you can always bring a bucket and a trash bag. But I just recommend having a little shovel, go out in the woods, dig a hole, you poop, you cover it up, game over, you're done. So it's a lot more scary than I think people realize, but there are definitely people I know that won't go camping for that exact reason.
Yeah,
So
if you're afraid of pooping in the woods, let me give you some advice that'll alleviate. Okay, because just like bear attacks and cougar attacks are rare, um, in the past 4 years of camping, I have dug a hole and pooped in it one time
yeah,
because I just hold it until I get to a gas station if I'm
Yeah.
traveling, and or try to camp somewhere near a campground that I can ride to and take care of it. And it's not that I don't like. I'll dig a hole if I have to, but if I don't have to, I'm not gonna.
And especially as an ADV rider and camper, like the thing to always keep in mind is you're going to be back in town the next day to get gas, to get,
You have to get
food,
gas.
get supplies, get water, whatever you need for the day. So just keep in the back of your mind that even if you do go out in the middle of nowhere, if you are one of those people that just can't poop, not in the bathroom, as long as you can survive 12 hours, you're going to do great. It's fine.
ADR sections, there's nothing longer than 120 miles.
Yeah.
You're
that's
never
it.
less than 120 miles from, or more than 120 miles from a bathroom.
Yeah. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, I think that's the only other thing I can think of other than, being afraid of humans and animals and monsters. So,
I mean, maybe getting lost or something, but like we have GPSs, so
yeah.
use it.
Yeah, watch when my Garmin video comes up in the next couple weeks for MotoCamp Nerd. Give that a watch because it'll talk about why it's important to have a Garmin.
Yeah,
Always
but
good.
that's an inReach, not a GPS, right?
It's true. It's an inReach.
You don't
Yeah.
seem to know the difference. It scares me a little.
I know. So I'll be more specific next time.
Okay, well, you know what? That is brilliant because guess what? The next thing on my notes is be prepared, and the first one is communication.
Yeah. Communication is good. Always make sure someone knows where you are, everybody. That is a big, big thing.
Yeah, and these things will alleviate your anxiety. So, one,
Yes.
knowing that someone knows where you are, and two, having like, I just don't go anywhere without my inReach. I always send, as soon as I find a campsite, send my wife, this is where I'm camping for the night because it's your location is attached. And if I cut myself or fell down or something, I could hit the SOS button. It's peace of mind. It's unlikely, I hope, unless you're just being stupid out there. But it sure feels better to know you have a way to communicate, even when you're off the grid. And if you're first getting started, just go somewhere with cell phone service.
Yeah. And honestly, if you are just starting out camping by yourself, probably better to do somewhere that is in service just so you have that option to talk to somebody in the middle of the night, whether it's, a significant other or a friend or whatever else, just in case to quell your anxiety if you need to. It's just a really smart idea until you're kind of weathered and seasoned enough to want to get out of reception and go dispersed camping.
Right. Yeah. People have this idea that it's not camping unless you go out there with a sharp stick and a tarp, and that is simply untrue. Like camping is whatever you want it to be.
Yeah. See our gatekeeping episode.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Are you sleeping in your bed? You might be camping if you're not.
Yeah. It's true.
If you brought your bed outside, you might be camping. I don't know.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. And, along with that, things to help alleviate your anxiety. Just be safe. We kind of talked about keeping your food secure. Don't do anything dumb, like, don't drink and, like, cut things up. And, like, if you're going to process firewood and have a beer, there's an order to do that in.
Yes.
You don't want to do it in the other order. That's bad, particularly when you're by yourself.
Also, and I'm saying this to the more open-minded part of the community in the sense of, like, some people like to go out in the woods and do things like mushrooms and whatever else. And if you're going to do that, that's great. Very happy for you. But don't do it by yourself. And if you're going to have anything, have a beer or two, calm the nerves. But otherwise, try and keep the other stuff to a minimum, because the worst thing that could happen is you get, like, too high or too whatever, and then you're seeing things in the woods that aren't there, and good luck.
Or you just, you're 5 beers in and you trip and fall and you're bleeding a lot, and you either can't deal with it or you fail to assess the situation, the severity of the situation.
Yeah.
When you're by yourself. So I agree with you in that, a beer or two is a great way to kind of calm the nerves, take the edge off, but getting drunk is not a good idea.
Yeah, don't get hammered. Little buzz is great. Calm yourself down, get to sleep, and then you're good to go. Yeah.
You need, especially if you're anxious, like having your bike pointed away and knowing that if you have to, you can just hop on it and go is a way to feel less anxious.
Yes, absolutely. And just being ready. I mean, I've talked about this before, but I always kept my helmet locked on my bike for a lot of reasons. And I think it's a safe way to, again, be ready to rock if you need to. Like, if you need to go hop on that bike and your helmet's locked on there somewhere, whether it's on the back or the front, you can rip out of there and be safe and have your helmet. There you go.
Yep. And carry first aid stuff. So boo-boos happen, especially if you're, not used to processing firewood or cutting up your steak or chopping vegetables. You could cut yourself. Like, you need a first aid kit.
Yes, boo-boos happen. Words of Ben. I like it. Happen.
Put it on a t-shirt, stamp it.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to ask you, because you're uniquely qualified to answer this question,
Okay.
about so obviously it would be stupid to not recognize that me camping alone and you camping alone are different things.
Right.
So, from your perspective as a woman who has camped alone, what advice do you have? What is different? What should women who might be interested in camping expect, and or what do men need to understand so they can be a little bit more helpful and sympathetic?
Yeah. I'll start talking to women. I'll give you guys some of the tips that I use. And the first one is that if I'm ever doing a solo trip, I usually kind of dress like a boy when I'm out on those trips. And it's not because I feel like it's a complete necessity. It's just because if you're a female, and you're alone, you're automatically going to draw attention. So being able to just kind of, one, be more comfortable, but two, kind of not advertise, like if I'm with friends or whatever else and it's hot, I'll be in camp in a sports bra and my moto pants and whatever else and not give a shit. But if it's just me in camp, I'll probably have a big baggy t-shirt on and be keeping to myself, because usually when you're out in nature alone, it's, you want some solace and some privacy. So just making sure you are dressing in a way that does protect yourself. And I hate that I have to say that, but the reality is I have to say it. And it really helped me a lot. I had a lot of situations, particularly when I was doing my coast trip, where I'd be like in a beanie and a big baggy shirt. And, I'd be going out and taking photos, and you could not tell if I was a boy or a girl at all. So it's just a nice way to fly under the radar. Second is, there are definitely people who, and I know we'll probably touch on this a little bit later too, Ben, but there are definitely people that carry while they ride. I occasionally will. I don't carry for humans. I carry for, honestly, animals, because I've never run into an issue where I've ever felt I needed it. But those trips obviously are US based only, and in states where I can do that. And if you are somebody who would like to carry and camp, I think that's totally fine. Make sure you have the proper licensure to do that, and also check your state laws, because every state is different and you can get into serious trouble if you're caught with a gun and you're in a state where you shouldn't have one. If you're not going to carry, which I think it might be a little extreme in a lot of these cases, having something just like mace or bear mace is great. And the reason you have that is so you can do a quick spray, go hop on your bike that's pointed away from camp, and ride away. That's it. Last thing I always do is I always make sure I have someone I'm checking in with every couple hours. For me, it's either been my partner at the time or my mom. And having one of those two people constantly be my person that's checking in with me is great, because then you have nothing to worry about. And if something were to happen, they know where you are. They have a number they can call, and you're safe. So those are my pieces of advice. As far as it goes for men, one of the ways you can kind of help alleviate our anxieties if you have like a single woman camping is just be nice. Like, don't be intrusive and like push a conversation, particularly if you aren't being asked questions in return. If you have a woman who's kind of walled up and like, yeah, nice to meet you, and does her own thing, leave her alone. She obviously wants the time for herself. And I know that sometimes that's hard for any person to understand, especially extroverted people. We like to have conversations. But there are a lot of people that just want to get out in the woods to be alone and be left alone. So unless you are feeling that engagement or that pursuit of conversation, just let them be. Also, maybe keep an eye on them. Make sure they're feeling comfortable. Like, if for some reason they're looking a little skittish or whatever else, and you have friends with you, only if you have friends with you, by the way, you can invite them to come hang out in your camp. Just say, hey, do you want to come have a beer with us? Like, or do you want to come hang out? We're going to make some food in a little bit. Just something to make them feel like maybe they're a little more safe. But know when to back off is the number one thing.
He was saying, "Don't be a creep."
Don't be a creep. This applies to all levels of life, gentlemen, by the
literally
way.
always.
Like, if a woman says kind of leave me alone, just leave her alone,
And if you're at all worried that you might be a creep, well, okay, actually, if you're confident you're not a creep, you're probably a little creepy.
Yeah,
If you
it's
worry
true.
about being a creep, you may still be a creep. Basically, just don't be a creep.
I think all guys have a little bit of creep in them. I mean,
Either way.
women do too, to a
Well, we're
certain
just
degree.
not good at subtle signals sometimes, but
Yes.
your
And
intentions
so
matter.
I would advise women too, in a non-bitchy way. If you want to be left alone and some dude is not leaving you alone, you just say, "Hey, look, I really appreciate you being kind. You know, I'm out here to just kind of have some alone time. So if you don't mind, I'm just gonna go hang on my campsite by myself. It's great to meet you. See ya." And if that doesn't send a clear enough signal, nothing is going to.
Well, then
So
you know it's time to get the hell out of there. But like,
yes,
really,
and you can,
hey, dude,
yeah,
I brought this really great book, and I just want to get back to it.
yeah,
Whatever.
just
But
anything, like, you know, sometimes if you are out camping by yourself, you need to be able to draw a boundary, and that's a very healthy thing to do. But yeah, all the ladies, I just say have some mace, wear some baggy clothes, and if you want to be left alone, ask to be left alone. That's it.
you ever done the two tent technique?
2-tent technique. What's
Yeah,
that?
you set up two tents so it looks like somebody's there with you. Like people do that sometimes. You
No,
think
I haven't, but I have done the my boyfriend's asleep in the tent. Um and that works like a charm, by the way. I've had that happen at a couple of campsites, just with like groups of people kind of getting overly friendly. I'm like, "Oh no, boyfriend's asleep in the tent. We're just gonna chill here tonight, but thank you." And they immediately back off. So if you are in a sketchy situation, I think that's a great point to make, Ben. Always say that you're not alone, because then if somebody is trying to creep on you, they'll definitely back off.
Yeah, and I will graciously sell you recordings of me sleeping for or snoring for
Yeah,
hours at a time for your
yeah,
protection and my
yeah.
profit.
Also, this goes for all tough situations. As long as you have cell phone reception, fake a phone call. Look down
Right.
at your phone. Oh, hey, I got to go take
My
this. My
phone's
mom's calling.
vibrating.
Thank you. Yeah, I have got myself out of weird conversations doing that many a time.
Wait,
Sometimes you
is that
have,
why you always get calls when I'm trying to talk to you?
not you. Get out of here. This is, this is for all the major creeps. Minor creeps
Oh,
are fine, but
that's a
major
good
ones.
point, Grace. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Oh, hey. Yeah. No, I'm not doing anything important. No. No. Okay. Yeah, I can talk. Okay. That's all. Thank you for the. See, it's so great to have your perspective, and I think I always learn something, which is good. And
Yeah,
people, need to just learn to listen and be respectful of other
yeah,
people. So, some techniques that we'll share our techniques. Here's some stuff that I think works well, or at least works well for me, and some of it is purely psychological. Like
yeah,
none of these things do anything to protect me, but they make me stop being so paranoid. Which because there's not
yeah.
actually anything out there. There isn't,
Yeah.
or statistically it's unlikely, and statistically, you're unlikely to be able to do anything about it anyway. So, one thing is set up your tent, and you can decide because if you're a person like Grace who wants to see everything, and say you're in a spot that had, like there's a road and there's like an opening, so you would set your tent up so that you can see the road and the approach to your campsite,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
And likewise, if the woods are the scary thing, right? Like, I'm afraid there's a bear out there. Just turn your tent away from it and
Yeah.
just be looking at the road. Don't look at the scary thing. If you're not staring at it, you're going to
Yeah.
think about it less.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. And earplugs. We talked about earplugs. Love the
Yes.
earplugs one.
Which I really do recommend earplugs, because even if it's not earplugs, you can also just put earbuds in and listen to some like calming music too, which does really help a lot of people. And I know some people might laugh that off, but I've had plenty of nights where I've been anxious about the drive, the ride the next day or something else, and just having some calm music, like listening to Coldplay, just letting the nervous system calm and falling asleep does wonders. So I highly recommend that. Also, there's nothing worse than being kept awake by animals or weather all night and then having to ride the next day. See the barn owl. But like, it's just awful. So I think earplugs or earbuds, for any number of reasons, are always a good thing to have just in case.
Yeah, I've been woken up, I don't know how many times, by anxiety about a noise outside my tent. Never
Yeah.
one time has it mattered.
Yeah.
So the idea is just don't hear them anymore and you'll just
Exactly.
sleep.
Yeah.
And I also just, well, one, I always have them on the bike anyway, because you should be riding with earplugs. But like now, it took me a really long time to realize how useful they are, even when you're not camping alone. Because like all of
Yep.
my friends snore, and sometimes you're in a campground or like at the Desert 100 last year, where people were partying literally right next to us until 3:30 in the morning. Like
Yeah.
all of these things are great reasons. Just pop your earplugs in, put a mask on, like, or just pull your neck gaiter over your face, particularly if it's going to be sunny early.
Neck gator.
I'll never
Oh, look
forget
how we
that
did
one.
that.
Shut out the world, which reminds me of my other thing I like to do, and it's just I like to go in my tent and pretend like the outside world doesn't exist. This is my safe
Yeah.
little cocoon. I'm not in the woods. I'm in my tent. I'm not out in the middle of nowhere. I'm in my tent. There's a really comfortable thing. It's warm.
Yeah.
I feel good. And so I just shut out the world, go in the tent, and don't think about what's outside because, again,
Yeah.
I can't do anything about it anyway.
Yeah.
As long as your fire's out and you've taken care of all that, go in your tent, chill out, enjoy it. Like, I think of it as like a safe place where I'll go in, be warm, look at my phone, read. Sometimes I'll play my Steam Deck, whatever,
Yeah.
and it's fun.
It's great. And it is. It's just a nice, if you start to look at it as your little cave and think of it that way, it will feel like a nice safe haven. It's just getting your mind wrapped around that, because I know that's difficult for a lot of people. It was difficult for me for a long time too, but once you get there, it's great. It's absolutely great.
Yeah, and my favorite tip for not being anxious when you go camping alone: don't go camping alone.
Yep. That's
Just
such
don't
a
do
good
it.
point.
Do it
Yeah,
with
I
someone.
mean, if you give it a couple tries and you hate it, then don't do it. Don't put yourself through the stress, Like, camping alone is great, but it is all, I mean, I'm the first person to tell you, camping with other people is way more fun. Unless
Oh
you
yeah,
want that break. But I have a blast going out camping with 1, 2, or 5 friends. It's such a good time, always.
man, I got to get some friends. That sounds
I
awesome.
know. I know.
Sounds
It's
like a lot of
terrible.
work. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Yeah.
Any
Boo.
other techniques from the mind of Grace for reducing your anxiety?
Yeah. I mean, I think I just want to retouch on the carrying thing, because again, like,
That
we're in a
was the next
country
thing.
where we technically have an amendment right to carry a weapon, but I just want to stress that, you know there really isn't a reason to have one. um it it's kind of along those same lines of, like, I feel like people who carry tend to run into situations where they might use them versus not carrying. And I have never had a human interaction with anyone while I've been camping where I've ever thought, oh, thank God I have my gun. Not once. So, if you are adamant that you want to feel safe and do that, great. I think you're better off going with something a little less intense, and just knowing you have a little extra protection. But for the most part, people are great that you meet out there. They really are. And you're not going to run into a lot of assholes.
Yeah, this is such a sticky wicket that I wanted to leave
Yeah.
it for last because it is impossible to talk about this without it turning into a political conversation,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is we're avoiding that right now. We're not going to have a political conversation. We're just talking about facts. And
Yeah.
me personally, as a responsible gun owner, um, I used to carry in the woods, especially when I first started by myself, like
Yeah.
for a long time. I don't anymore.
Yeah.
Because one, the likelihood that you are going to encounter a situation that requires a firearm is low,
Yeah.
and the other thing is, in Oregon, you have to take a class and prove your skill in order to be able to carry. And I just think
Right.
if you're not practiced, if you don't know how to use that tool, you're just as likely to hurt yourself or someone inadvertently as you are to need it for
Absolutely.
protection.
Yeah.
And think about this: our friends in Great Britain, Canada, and Australia camp unarmed all the time, and they
All
have
the time.
spiders the size of your head in
Oh my
Australia.
God. Have you seen some of the animals in Australia, you guys? Holy shit. It is like here on steroids. Like, some of the animals they have are just, they're monsters. They're actual monsters, and they don't have that right like we do, and they don't carry when they go camp, and everybody seems to do pretty okay. So I don't know. I mean, I'm with Ben on that. I mean, the main reason I even carry when I camp is typically only now when I have my dogs with me, and that's because I love my dogs. They're basically my children. And if an animal were to come in to attack camp, I want to make sure that I can keep us safe. And if one of them goes after my dogs, that thing is going down. That's all I'm saying. So that's why I carry it. When it's just me now, I never bring my gun, ever. I
Yeah.
just leave it at home. There's just no reason. I usually have a couple very sharp knives and mace, and that does the trick. So there
Yeah,
we
and
go.
like Grace, I just carry bear spray now for a couple reasons.
Yeah.
Because the situations that people always cite for
Mhm.
needing a gun. What if a drunk idiot stumbles into your camp and is belligerent? Or what if a guy's high on drugs? Or blah, blah, blah. Neither one of those situations are a situation in which I want to kill someone.
No,
Uh,
not
I don't
ever.
want to kill someone who's high or out of their mind. I don't want to kill someone anyway, but bear
Yeah.
spray, I'll spray your ass with bear spray. It's not going
Yeah.
to kill you, but it's going to give you plenty of time to get away. And bonus, it works on bears. And it's a lot easier. Like, very few of us
Yeah.
have ever had to use a firearm in a stressful situation,
Yeah.
and it's not as easy as you like to pretend it is. And I would much
Yeah.
rather just have something where the consequences for screwing it up are a lot less lethal, and it's a lot easier to use. I mean, you gotta let them get closer. Obviously, someone's
Yeah.
going to tear this argument apart, and that's fine. This is my personal opinion. I would
No,
rather bear spray some crazy guy than kill him.
absolutely. Honestly, like, let's face the facts, everybody. Not one of us is John Wick, okay? Get over it. I
What?
know we all want to be, but we're not. So we're going to leave that behind us. But the other piece of it is you should not be putting yourself into a situation with a gun where you feel like you're going to need to use it. If you're doing that, you probably shouldn't go camping by yourself. Just saying. You need to be at a comfort level where you feel safe and okay doing this, not going out scared, holding onto your 9mm while you fall asleep. All right. So you can have your opinion on it all you want, animals, crazy people, whatever. But the bottom line is, and any concealed carry teacher will teach this to you, it's you never draw your weapon or bring a weapon unless you plan on using it. So leave it at home. Don't even put yourself in a situation like that. It's not worth it. You have to
Well,
live with that for the rest of your life?
well, just don't go to those places. It's like we talked about.
Yeah.
Everything else leads to this, right? If you're
Yeah.
following all the other tips we talked, you're not going to end up in a place. Like if
No.
you're using you're not going to places that are obviously occupied or close to town,
Right.
or like if there's signs or if your alarm bells are going on, you're going to
Yeah.
pick up on these things before the situation gets to the point. So
Yeah.
just be smart, and one, you're never going to encounter it. You're not going to. You're just not. The worst thing that's ever happened to me in the woods was a couple drunk guys at a campsite would not stay the hell out of our campsite, but they were just like old grandpa guys. It was kind of funny,
Yeah.
but I was like, Jesus, get out of here. Like, oh my God,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
And sometimes your stuff like maybe your stuff gets stolen. I'm not going to shoot somebody for taking my cooler. Like, I'm just not.
No.
So it
No.
just, we hear the stories because they're terrifying and people, but statistically speaking, you're going to camp your whole life and never see anything that scary. And that's sort of the point, I guess, is like, that was sort of the point of the first question. What were your initial camping experiences like, and how do you feel now? Because once you go out and just nothing bad ever happens, you just kind of calm down.
Yeah. And you realize too that, like, one of the things that entertainment and media do really well is they know how to entertain. And a lot of times with situations like this, fear is the thing that gets pushed a lot, and being prepared, right? But the bottom line is, most of the time when you're going out in the woods, people that are also going out in the woods are just like you and just
Yep.
want to be out in nature having a nice time. Obviously you're going to run into shitheads, but it's very few and far between. And most of the time they're just a little too drunk and they don't really realize what's going on. So I would say, yeah, of course, you're going to have anxieties if you're going out to camp by yourself, especially the first couple times. But that doesn't mean you need to be like fearful anxious. Having trepidations is normal, but you just got to be able to figure out how to work through them. Or again, like Ben pointed out, just don't go camping alone. Easy.
Yeah. Be smart, identify the sources of your anxiety, take steps to mitigate them, prepare yourself, have a communication and escape plan, be safe, and have a couple beers, put your earplugs in, and go to sleep.
Yep. And just sleep. Yeah. Piece of cake. But yeah. Other than that, I think that's pretty much all I got. Again, if there's any ladies out there that have questions too about kind of how I worked through all of that, like, I'm very happy to answer those questions. The big thing that also is like a habit I got into, I would always read for at least 30 minutes before I went to bed. So, and this obviously comes back to just like being on the phone kind of keeps you up at night too. But getting off the phone, having the headlamp on, and doing something where you kind of get out of your own headspace, I think really helps you fall asleep in those more stressful situations. Like, if you have a good book and you get lost in that, then you're going to go to sleep a lot easier because all that weird anxiety will dissipate as you read. So that's a great habit that I got into that really, really helped me, especially those first couple of weeks where I was on the road and camping almost every night. It was so nice. But that would be my only other suggestion.
Yeah, I think do what Grace says.
I know some
That's
things.
what I always do.
I know some stuff. Not a lot,
Yeah.
but some stuff.
Yeah. So Grace, if people want to learn more of the stuff that you know, where can they find you to follow you?
You can find me on Instagram and on the YouTubes under The Graceful Renegade. And Ben, where can everybody find you?
Well, I am mostly known as the Dork in the Road on the YouTubes, but I'm a Dork in the Road, one of many apparently on Instagram and TikTok and here and there. Mostly YouTube these days, Facebook, whatever.
Yeah,
Grace, man, it's been such a pleasure.
I know. We have so
To
much fun. Also, I almost finished my bourbon. I'm digging this happy hour podcast thing. This is kind of nice. It's a nice way to decompress after one hell of a long week. So,
I refilled mine even.
yeah. Ooh, very nice. Very nice.
Hold on,
All right,
ASMR.
sir. Well, to all of our lovely viewers and
Just bring up
listeners,
my
I'll say
ASMR.
live wild, ride free.
And ASMR.
You need more?
No, ASMR. I'm just shh. People need to just hear the sound of the clinking.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's a thing.
Okay, it's a thing.
She won't stop talking. Do not forget to be excellent to each other. Oh, thank you.
Bye.